Welcome to Brain Lady Speaks with Julie Anderson on the Lessons in Joyful Living Radio Network. Julie Brain Lady Anderson is considered to be one of the nation's top experts on the brain-personality connection. She has been inspiring her audiences to fire up their brains and ignite positive changes in their relationships. And now she is here to bring that knowledge to you. The information she shares will help those who hear it to accelerate their success in life and business through the discovery of their natural gifts and maximizing their brain power. When you learn to tap into the potential of your natural gifts and the power of the brain-mind connection, there is no limit to what you can accomplish. Today and every Wednesday on Brain Lady Speaks, you'll explore the latest findings to see how they have practical application in your life. And now, get ready to join Julie Anderson on Brain Lady Speaks on the Lessons in Joyful Living Radio Network. Take it away, Julie.
Good morning. Good morning. It is a beautiful Wednesday morning, February 10th. And you are here listening to the Brain Lady Speaks radio show on the Lessons in Joyful Living Network with Julie Brain Lady Anderson, yours truly. I am just really, I'm hyper this morning. Let me tell you, I got some energy going on, and it's an amazing topic. It always gets me jazzed when I get to talk about the science behind psychology. And that's what the focus of the Brain Lady Speaks show is all about. It's all about understanding human behavior and relationships, and how does science help us to understand, more specifically neuroscience, how does it help us to understand more about individuals? And then how can we utilize that information? How can we take that research and actually apply it into our relationships and into our individual lives, whether it's in business or in, just our personal relationships? How can we use that to just improve every connection that we have? And it's fascinating. Science to me is just absolutely fascinating. And I do want to remind everyone too that there are a lot more resources. If you like what you hear here, there are a lot more resources on the Your Best Mind online website. So it's yourbestmindonline.com. And there you can, there's even our topic for today is the he said, she said, who said what, and we have a CD on that topic on the website. I also do a lot of blogs that are really informative and that share a lot of the scientific research. And again, how you can take this fascinating information and put it into a very practical application for your day-to-day life. Because, other than that, it's just, oh, this is really cool, right? This is interesting the way the brain works. But if it doesn't have something that we can use to make our day-to-day life even better. And that's what we want to talk about. And that this month, I'm really excited about the February topic, because I'm trying to make every month have kind of a theme for the whole month. And so February being the month that is the love month, out of the year, it's the one month that everybody thinks about those romantic relationships, with the holiday of that many people celebrate coming up, of Valentine's Day. People are looking at that, and whether you get involved in that event or not, it does kind of bring to top of mind the relationship, the intimate relationship topic, and how do you truly connect deeply and intimately with a person and then make that relationship successful, because it's not always successful. There's a lot of things that, get into our lives and into our relationships that can sometimes crush those. So today's topic is just specifically that. It is he said, she said, who said what. So how do we utilize the information coming out of brain science, neuroscience, and psychological studies to help us to understand the way the opposite sex thinks? It's a fun, it really is a fun topic, right? There are comedians that have entire stand-up routines that are based totally and completely on the difference between the way a woman thinks and the way a man thinks. If you're on social media, I'm sure you've seen that, that post that floated around for a while, and every now and then it pops up again. The caption is, "Science finally wrote a manual to understand the female brain or the female mind." And the picture is this book that's like, 4 foot tall, right? This huge book, because so many people think that it's just this very complicated thing, the woman's brain. We're actually going to explore that a little bit as we go through the show today. And if you want a really just a humorous way of looking at a very serious subject, look on YouTube. And I might see if I can put a link to this on my landing page on the Lessons in Joyful Living radio network, because he's absolutely hilarious. He is a marriage counselor. His name is Mark Gungor. And if you just look up the topic on YouTube of Nothing Box Mark Gungor, it's hilarious. It is 5 minutes well spent. It really gets the endorphins flowing in your brain. And the way you have to watch it, you can't just listen to it, or else I play it for you here, because you have to watch his mannerisms. And he has these props on the stage, and he's got a female, head and brain, and he's got a male head and brain, and he walks between the two of them and talks about him. And he takes this technical information in 5 minutes that I share throughout my larger presentations and workshops, and he puts it in this cool little capsule of 5 minutes that's really very, very humorous. And I love it. I endorse him highly, and I show, whenever I do this workshop a lot. Interestingly enough, I even do this topic a fair amount. I did it several times last year for corporate owners, for CEOs, male CEOs, and they had their wives come. And we did a 4-hour workshop multiple times last year, specifically on the he said, she said, who said what topic of understanding the difference in the brains. And it is just so funny. It gets a lot of laughs. So, I'll try to put that up there so you can look at it. But all joking aside, when you start to dig into the topic of the difference between the male and the female brain, it can become quite serious. Okay, it really, really, really can. First of all, it can be hard sometimes to connect deeply with someone of the opposite sex, because if you just don't understand, if they're just thinking completely different than you. And there's multiple reasons, by the way. We're going to discuss those as we go through the show today. There's multiple reasons why. And it's not always connected to male-female differences. Sometimes it's completely something else that drives those differences that people may attribute to the male-female difference. But it can be very difficult. A lot of problems can develop, and you can't ever make that deep connection. Some people really find that challenging. And then second of all, again, joking aside, the difference sometimes, if you have a very masculine brain and a very feminine brain, that difference can be so vast that once you're actually in a relationship, it can fail. It can fall apart because of these extreme differences in the personalities, or in their brain personality connection. So you can really see how, if you understand this information and then you apply it in your lives, it can have a very tremendously positive effect. And that's really the reason to even discuss this, right? Is to be able to have that positive reaction, or that positive functioning in your relationship based on this information. And I have to say too, as I start out talking about this, whenever I talk about the differences in the brain personality connection, and I've said this before on the show, but I think it always merits repeating, I am never at any time saying that one type of brain connection is better than another one. Okay, I'm not going to be on this topic as a woman saying, whoa, women rock. We're the better sex. I'm not saying that at all. Okay, what I'm trying to really point out is just the differences, and a rose is absolutely beautiful. One of the most beautiful flowers out there. But you look at the intricacies of an orchid, and it is just as beautiful. Or the beauty and the simplicity of a daffodil, right? They're all incredibly beautiful. They're just very different Their shapes are different. Their colors are different. The way they look is completely different. And that's what we're talking about, is just the differences. It doesn't mean that the daffodil's better than the rose, or the rose is better than the orchid, or so on and so forth. We're just talking about those amazing differences that make up the dynamic personalities in our relationships. So that is what we're focusing on today. And I really want everybody to understand that, and to take that, take this information for what it is, and don't think that I'm, pounding anyone, preaching that one is better than the other. Okay. But when you talk about relationships, when you get into what makes relationships fail, listed among the top 10 problems in a significant other, an intimate relationship, or a marriage, 5 of those top 10 problems are directly connected to the brain personality connection. So lack of communication, or poor communication, or miscommunication is one of them. A second is different ideas on how to parent or how to raise children. That comes very much not just from the way you were raised, but from the way your brain thinks. How to deal with in-laws. Again, dealing with the brain personality connections of multiple people in a relationship. Understanding that can help. Personality conflicts between the husband and wife, or between the male and female, and then disagreements regarding that intimacy, disagreements regarding sex. These are all things, these are 5 of the top 10 reasons why people have problems in their marriage. And understanding the difference between the way the brains are wired can really help you to understand, or to connect better with a significant other. So we're going to talk about all these differences as we go through the show today. And it's a jam-packed. I mean, you might want to, if you're not in the car listening to me, you might want to whip out a pen and paper, because it is going to be a jam-packed show with lots and lots of information. And you're going to love it. You're going to love it. You're going to start having a lot of aha moments when you're kind of going, that's why he does this, or that's why she does this. It makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. So we're going to cut out to break here in just a few seconds and take a short break. But I want you to be thinking about that. I want you to be putting your mindset into improving your relationship by applying this information and understanding how these differences are going to affect it. So join me back in just a few minutes, or just a few seconds, on the Brain Lady Speaks radio program.
With her thorough understanding of brain chemistry, Julie Anderson provides you with tools and processes that will change your life in a positive way. Julie uniquely blends science and psychology when she shares her knowledge and information with businesses, entrepreneurs, women's groups, and families to improve workplace morale and productivity, parents creating dynamic relationships with their children, and women achieving more in life and business. Julie Anderson will be right back with Brain Lady Speaks on the Lessons in Joyful Living Radio Network.
Welcome to TogiNet, Cutting Edge Radio.
Welcome back to Brain Lady Speaks on the Lessons in Joyful Living Radio Network. By including the latest scientific research on the brain-personality connection, Julie Brain Lady Anderson provides her clients with the all-important why behind what people do and how they think. The information she shares will help those who hear to accelerate their success in life and business through the discovery of their natural gifts and maximizing their brain power. Here again is your host, Julie Anderson, with Brain Lady Speaks on the Lessons in Joyful Living Radio Network.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back. Okay, so let's dive into this. As we get into these differences that I'm talking about, I also want to emphasize something else. I already talked about not thinking that I'm promoting one sex over another, because I'm not. But I also want you to understand that depending on the chemical bath that the brain gets during pregnancy, you can have different extremes. Like you can have the man that is just like that quintessentially masculine, total male brain. And then you can have a woman that is that extremely feminine, exactly what would be described in the dictionary as a feminine female brain. But depending on the strength of that bath, you may have just the opposite. So you could have a female that if she has her brain scanned, the way it thinks in general, the way it works in general, it looks more like a male brain. And vice versa. You can have the opposite. You can have a male brain that, depending on the strength of that testosterone bath that it gets, is going to be, much more feminine in nature. And it's kind of interesting because they've done this with subsequent pregnancies of, women who have had multiple male children. And oftentimes the later pregnancies, they feel, based on the fact that the chemical bath isn't as strong for, say, the third boy as it is for the first boy, that his brain tends to scan more feminine, quote unquote feminine, for what you would want to describe as that. So it's kind of interesting and they believe that has to do with the fact that, women only have access to so much testosterone, and the older we get, or the more we use in pregnancy to help that developing fetus, that male developing fetus, it could change. So I want you to keep that in mind too. What we're talking about is in general. And sometimes the differences that we see between the sexes, we attribute to the sexes, but it really has more to do with what I call your brain quadrant dominance. And we're going to talk about that a lot in the month of March. A lot about how to really step into your own brain personality connection and understand it based on energy expenditure in the brain and energy preferences within your own individual brain. So, for example, what I mean by this is everybody kind of knows the idea and the concept of right brain, left brain. And you can have a left brain, or a right brain male that thinks more like a right brain female then they think like a left brain male. Okay, does that make sense? So if you've got a left brain male and a right brain male, the right brainer is going to, resonate more and think more like the rest of the right brainers in society, whether they're male or female. And the left brainers are going to think more like left brainers in society, male or female. So sometimes when I do this presentation, I'll have people come up to me afterwards and, the husband will look at the the wife standing next to him and go, she's a man, or the wife will look at me and go, he's a woman. So it doesn't always, it's not 100% of the time. But in general, when you scan the brain of a man and a woman, in general, most of the time, you find some pretty significant differences. And those have to do with those chromosomal, what is in your DNA. It starts in your DNA. And when there is that Y chromosome that is present at 6 weeks gestation, the brain gets a chemical bath if it is a male, if that Y chromosome is there. And that changes that inherently female brain into a male brain. So that's the chemical bath I was talking about earlier. So now you have it change, the physical characteristics, obviously, between the male and female. But you also have the mental characteristics that begin to change between the male and the female brain. And different areas, there are 12 main areas between the male and the female brain in general, that have some pretty significant differences. And those significant differences through research is found to change the way that life is perceived, that situations are perceived. And in all honesty, those differences make a beautiful match. They absolutely make a beautiful match. They're like one's one half of the puzzle and the other sex is the other half of the puzzle. So when you bring those two together, you get this big, beautiful picture. Now, when you talk about women genetically, they're actually kind of more complex because the X chromosome has more genes to it. The Y chromosome carries less than 100 genes, and the X chromosome carries about 1,500 genes. So men only have one X chromosome, women have two. Women, technically, we just have a more complex system to run, right? It's pretty complex to run the whole pregnancy bit. So we do tend to have a more complex brain. However, it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean one's better or worse, right? It just means that's why there's that huge book, right, written about how to understand the brain, right? It's really not that complicated once you understand the science behind it. So I'm going to talk about a few differences that I feel are really, really powerful differences that if you take these few differences and think about them and apply the information in your relationship, you're really going to notice a difference. You're really going to notice some very positive results. The first one is in the corpus callosum. So if you're looking at the brain, the corpus callosum is the main system that connects the left brain to the right brain, left side of the brain, the left hemisphere to the right hemisphere. It runs kind of underneath the cerebrum, and it's where all those messages from the right brain go to the left brain, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And brain scans of men and women show that women have much larger corpus callosum, and each of those connecting fibers tend to be larger in diameter. Okay, so when you're looking at the scanning of the brain, you have men tend to, and they believe it's based on the size of the corpus callosum, tend to keep their thought process on one hemisphere or the other hemisphere. They don't bounce all over the place. Whereas women, they're constantly jumping from the right hemisphere to the left and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, rather than staying what I call lateralized on one side of the brain. So I have this really cute overhead that I use in my presentations, right? And it shows this major freeway interchange in a major metropolitan city. So I want you to visualize that in your mind. This major, maybe you're close to Los Angeles or Chicago or New York, outside of New York, or San Francisco, wherever it may be. And there's freeway on ramps and off ramps, and major freeway international freeway interchange, or not international. There's major freeway changes, that are merging or branching off to, and that's just covered with cars. This is a woman's corpus callosum, and every single one of those cars is a thought. Okay, every single car is a thought. So hopefully you got that pictured well in your head, right? Now what I want you to picture is what the man's brain is like. Do you have a guess? I want you to visualize or imagine a quiet 2-lane country road. Okay? Beautiful, quiet 2-lane country road. Not a lot of cars. Not a lot of traffic. That's a male's brain. Okay? So what happens then is you've got a woman with all of these different thoughts bouncing around in her head. And when she's trying to communicate with the man, what we tend to do as women is talk about too many things all at the same time. And if there's any guys listening, I'm sure they're nodding their head going, oh yeah, that happens all the time, right? So the man may be sitting and, thinking about or sitting and working on his computer or looking at something on the internet. Or, hey, Super Bowl was last weekend. Maybe they're into football or they're into sports and they're sitting and they're watching the basketball game or whatever it is. And the woman comes up and she goes, da 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 da, what about this or what about that? Or, this happened today. And from her perspective, she's got all these roads. So she can watch TV and she can have this conversation all at the same time. And she can talk about how her day went. She can talk about the kids. She can talk about the next door neighbor. She can talk about the mother. She can talk about all of these things because she's got room on her major freeway to do so. Whereas the man, on the other hand, once you start to kind of throw all of these cars or all of these thoughts onto that 2-lane country road, what happens? What's going to happen? There's going to be a major accident. Either there's going to be a major accident or there's road closure signs, right? And he's not going to let those topics come into his brain because he innately knows it will cause an accident. So you'll be thinking that he's sitting there ignoring you as a woman, as a wife, as a female significant other. You'll be thinking that they're ignoring you when in actuality, the gates are closed to their road. You can't get their road, not because they're being rude, just because they're so single thought. They're just single thought processors, and their single thought at that moment is the television, it is the car, it is the internet thing that they're looking at. They don't have the room on their highway or their 2-lane country road to put it. So I always tell women, you've got to make sure that you become the single thought. So, get his attention, gently touch him on his arm. If he's an auditory, say something to him. Stand there in his line of sight if he's a visual. We talked about the communication styles last week. Get his attention, but only briefly for a moment to say, you know what, I've got something kind of fun I want to discuss with you, or I've got something that I need your advice on, I need your help with. Stroke their ego. They love it, right? Tell them you need their help, because men like to solve the problems. Tell them you need their help. Tell them you want to have a quick conversation. When you are done with what you are doing now, is that okay? Try that next time, ladies. Seriously, try that next time. It's going to reduce frustration. You're not going to get your feelings hurt because they're ignoring you. They're not going to get angry because you're buzzing in their head when they're trying to do something. It's going to completely diffuse any potential there for a heated confrontation or for feelings getting hurt. And understand the science behind the psychology of this. This is the way their brain works. It's a beautiful thing, because what that 2-lane country road allows them to do is laser focus on whatever that 1 or 2 or 3 cars they have on that road is. Laser focus. And women, we don't have that talent as much. We can do a lot of things all at once, but sometimes we find it challenging to laser focus, whereas the man, they can do that. So it's a beautiful difference here. It's an absolutely beautiful difference, and they both are very functionally connected. They're very functionally, matched. Like I said, it's a beautiful 2 pieces to the puzzle, but you have to honor that. And if you don't honor that and something crazy comes out of this situation, then you can kind of step back and go, oh, 2-lane country road, or, oh, she's got a massive freeway in her head. So I just got to understand that, and I got to go with it, and I got to honor that, and I got to appreciate those differences between the sexes. So this is just one of the many areas in the brain that are different, that will cause differences in perspectives and in the way that we do things. So next time that you're trying to communicate something important, keep this in mind. Keep this one thing in mind. We're going to cut out here for a short break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about some more fun stuff on the Brain Lady Speaks radio program.
With her thorough understanding of brain chemistry, Julie Anderson provides you with tools and processes that will change your life in a positive way. Julie uniquely blends science and psychology when she shares her knowledge and information with businesses, entrepreneurs, women's groups, and families to improve workplace morale and productivity, parents creating dynamic relationships with their children, and women achieving more in life and business. Julie Anderson will be right back with Brain Lady Speaks on the Lessons in Joyful Living Radio Network.
Welcome to TogiNet, radio with a cutting edge.
If you're ready for a big change in your work, your career, your happiness, your life, it's time for the $1 Million Mindset with Marla Tabaka. Monday afternoons at 2, 1 Central on TogiNet.com. Marla believes that with the right mindset, anything is possible. Join us as successful life coach Marla Tabaka inspires you and her clients to explore, discover, and live your dreams by developing what she calls the $1 Million Mindset. Marla will inspire you to take action on your dreams and reveal secrets to success that will help you realize your own unique power. Tune into the $1 Million Mindset for heartwarming stories with Marla Tabaka. Learn tips and tricks to building a successful business and unlock the secrets to creating a happier, more balanced life through abundant thinking and attraction power. For more information on the $1 Million Mindset, go to our website, marlatabaka.com. That's MarlaTabaka.com. It's the $1 Million Mindset with Marla Tabaka. Monday afternoons at 2, 1 p.m. Central on TogiNet.com.
Welcome back to Brain Lady Speaks on the Lessons in Joyful Living Radio Network. By including the latest scientific research on the brain-personality connection, Julie Brain Lady Anderson provides her clients with the all-important why behind what people do and how they think. The information she shares will help those who hear to accelerate their success in life and business through the discovery of their natural gifts and maximizing their brain power. Here again is your host, Julie Anderson, with Brain Lady Speaks on the Lessons in Joyful Living Radio Network.
All right, we are back. We are back. Back to this fun topic of the difference between the male brain and the female brain. So we're halfway through the show and we've only covered one main topic. I tell you, this is just, it's hilarious to me how interesting it is, and I kind of get on this roll. So I hope you're sticking with me and you're hanging with me because we got some more fun stuff to share. When we're talking again about these differences in the way the brain scans, another really, and this is kind of everybody knows this point. They just don't know why this is a difference. It is the speech centers in the brain. So women may speak maybe just a little bit more than men. You think? Right? Well, guess what? There is a scientific reason for it. The scientific reason is because the way the speech centers are set up in general. Again, remember, sometimes you can have a very feminine male brain, and I don't mean, I don't mean that in a negative term. I'm saying you might just have a male brain that scans more like a female brain, and you might have a female brain that scans more like a male brain, right? Keep that in mind. But when you're talking about in general, the difference between the male and female brain, there are differences in the speech centers. So typically the male have and access and utilize one main speech center. And that's the Broca's area of the brain. A lot of people have heard that term, the Broca's area, okay? That is located in the front left portion of the brain. And it is the primary speech center in the brain. It is the home of cognitive speech. It is the home of audible speech, okay? And for the most part, this is the main part of the brain that men will employ, or the cerebrum, when men will employ when processing language. Okay. Women, however, and this is very interesting because this is kind of a newer, something kind of newer research, is that women tend to employ both sides of the cerebrum when processing languages. And they may have the potential for multiple speech centers, some that employ that right side. So when you're thinking about what's the difference between the right brain and the left brain, and again, we're going to go over this in March, so you're going to have to listen to me in March because that's when we're going to really hit hard on the difference between the hemispheres and difference between the front portions of the brain and the back portions of the brain and how that applies into personality and into relationships. But when you're processing language on the right side tends to express more emotion. And the reason why is because it has many more neural connections to the limbic system in the brain. The limbic system in the brain is the home of emotion in the brain. So right brainers tend to be more emotional or tend to display and feel a little bit deeper emotion. And when you are processing speech utilizing the right side of the brain, guess what? You're pulling in those emotions more than people who only utilize the left side of the brain. Does that make sense? So the left side of the brain processes more on a logical field and the right side of the brain more on an emotional field based on the wiring. And therefore, if you're only utilizing primarily the left side of the brain, then what's going to be the pattern of your thinking? It's going to be more on the logical side. If you're employing both sides of the brain, you will not only see the logic, but you'll also see the emotion that's involved. And you'll also utilize emotion when you are actually speaking. So your sentences might contain more emotion in them or more emotional-based words. And that's the way the female brain is because they tend to employ both sides of the cerebrum when they're processing language. Another interesting thing is that there is a zone in the left hemisphere that's related to understanding language. That zone in women, on average, tends to be about 11% more dense with neurons than in the male brain. 11% more dense. So literally, when you're scanning at the two brains, women have more brain matter, more area in their brains that are connected to language. Now, I want you to put this into how does that affect or how does that show up in their personality? Well, guess what? It starts with women just simply speaking more words per day. Now, there's lots of different studies out there. You'll find lots of different figures. But across the board, there's almost always one factor that remains the same. And that is the multiples. That is how many more words do women use multiple-wise than men. So let me explain. So men, the study that I like to quote is that men generally speak about 12,000 words per day. Guess what women speak on average? About 50,000 words per day, or at least according to this one study. Now, you will find other studies out there that might show something like men only speak, 8,000 words per day. But it will almost always show that women will speak 4 times as many, 36,000 words per day. Does that make sense? So almost all the time, you're going to find that there are so many more words that women speak than men. And it's because of the way their brains are wired. Okay. Here's another interesting. When they study men's speech, the type of speech that they use versus the type of speech, a man uses versus the type of speech that women use, guess what? Women speak almost 100% that are actually words, whereas men, only about 60% of the sounds that come from their mouth are words. The other 40% are sounds. They're grunts and groans, right? And what's interesting is men know this. You can have 2 guys sitting on a couch watching a football game, and they may not utter a single audible word, and yet they'll have a complete conversation about that game just based on sounds and grunts and groans, right? You've heard it. We've all heard it. Guys know it. They can totally completely communicate without having to use words, which is pretty cute. But again, it has to do with all this brain, right, that is devoted to different parts of understanding language. This also affects the way we problem solve. Okay, so think about it. Women have a lot of extra words that we can use every day. We've got all these 50,000 words we can use. Men only have a quarter of that. If that. You got an introverted man, he's going to have even less. An introverted kinesthetic man, he's going to have even less, right? So what happens is for a woman, when she is problem solving, she's going to use these words. She's going to think outside. She's going to process information out loud. And as she's processing, as she's talking, she's figuring the problem out. So see, women really, in general, just want to be heard. They don't always want somebody to fix their problem. They don't want their significant other to fix the problem. They just want them to be a sounding board. They just want to verbalize the steps of fixing the problem, of figuring things out, processing externally, right? And then they kind of fix the problem on their own in their head. Now, men, on the other hand, they don't have as many words, so they're not going to process it externally. They're going to process the information internally, silently. And so as they're listening to the woman express her feelings, her emotions, or just simply the facts of the problem, their brain's going, I'm fixing this problem, I'm calculating it, because they're laser focused. So they're gonna laser focus to help you fix this problem. And then as soon as you stop talking, boom, they want to fix the problem and they give you the answer. And as silly as this sounds, and there's a cute YouTube video wandering around out there, that expresses this, that shows this, how men just want to fix the problem and women just want to be heard. So I tell my husbands and wives or my significant others when I'm talking to them, okay, you got to understand, guys, she just wants to be heard. Ladies, you got to understand the way his brain works. It's going to want to fix the problem. So there's 2 ways you can deal with this situation. All right. One is, ladies, if you just want to be heard, call a girlfriend, vent to a girlfriend, and then later on share with your mate. You know what? I had this problem, but I talked to Sally about it. Sally helped me figure it out. Boom, this is what I'm going to do. Cool. Disagreement averted. So you either call a girlfriend or you tell your mate up front. This is something we oftentimes don't do because we just assume that they know what we're thinking and that they know what we want. Don't ever do that. Do not assume. No matter how long you've been married to a person. I've been married for 29 years and I still got to tell them, I just need you to hear me. I just need you to listen. I just got to figure this out and I want to talk. Okay? Tell them that up front. I don't need you to fix the problem. I just need a sounding board. Can you just be that sounding board for me? Okay, ladies, that's the best way to handle that situation. And gentlemen, for you, when the woman stops expressing her issue or stops talking about the problem, first of all, be attentive when she's doing it. Try to focus on the important words. Try to focus on the I know it's hard for you sometimes to process the emotional words because you don't have that processing, that language processing on the right side of the brain. So try to just focus on what she's doing. Then when she stops talking, before you start talking, ask her, or when you start talking, the first thing you should say is ask her, so how are you feeling about it? Do you want my opinion? Do you want me to think about, or, do you want me to tell you what I think you should handle this? Or are you good? Did you just, did you get it out? Sometimes she's going to say, you know what? Yeah. What do you think I should do? Boom. They just open the gate. You can answer. But sometimes they're just going to say, no, I'm okay. Thank you for listening. Think about how bonding that is in a relationship when you do that. Instead of feelings getting hurt afterwards, instead of feelings getting hurt as a result of, you spewed out the answer and she just wanted to be heard. So she thinks you weren't really listening. You were just trying to fix it. And you think, well, I was trying to fix it and help her, but she didn't take my advice. So now she did, why do I even bother and try, kind of a thing. So none of that happens. All of that gets diffused away when you understand the wiring of the brain and you understand the reason why things are the way they are and what each of the sexes needs in a situation. And I'm going to talk to you ladies in a minute when you come back about how to really understand or really appreciate in the male brain the way that their male brain works and the different understandings of words. Women tend to put a deeper understanding in words and men are kind of more superficial. There's a few things that I'm going to share when we come back from break here. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about a couple other parts. I'm going to squeeze in 2 more parts of the brain that I really think are significant to understand and really have a difference in the way our brains process and in the way we figure things out and in the way we feel about different situations. And why that is connected to science. So I hope you've been writing feverishly. If not, you can come back and listen to the recording later. You can download it soon. And we're going to cut away for a short break. Thanks for listening on the Brain Lady Speaks radio program. And come on back with me.
With her thorough understanding of brain chemistry, Julie Anderson provides you with tools and processes that will change your life in a positive way. Julie uniquely blends science and psychology when she shares her knowledge and information with businesses, entrepreneurs, women's groups, and families to improve workplace morale and productivity, parents creating dynamic relationships with their children, and women achieving more in life and business. Julie Anderson will be right back with Brain Lady Speaks on the Lessons in Joyful Living Radio Network.
Valentine's Day has been celebrated in different ways around the world. In Italy, one tradition suggests that the first man a single woman sees on Valentine's Day was the man she would eventually marry. What's a word for the first person you see after you leave the house in the morning? A qual tag. In South Africa, some women pin the name of their love interest on their shirt sleeves, following an ancient Roman tradition known as Lupercalia. This is how South African men learned of their secret admirers. In America, it is widely believed that if women don't receive a gift of candy, flowers, or a card from their guy on Valentine's Day, he's probably going to get dumped. This is usually the cause for a charrette or an 11th hour effort by men to buy their woman a Valentine's gift. I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Word.
Have you heard? The pages of American Patchwork and Quilting magazine come to life on our new weekly online radio show, American Patchwork and Quilting. Join Pat Sloan, our blogging and quilt designer host, as she talks about the latest trends, ideas, and inspirations. Her guests include quilt pattern designers, authors, quilt shop owners, and our editors. All quilters, just like you. Call in with your questions. Get quilting tips from industry experts. Learn about free patterns. Hear behind-the-scenes stories from our magazines, American Patchwork and Quilting, Quilt Sampler, and Quilts and More. Get the scoop on free stuff and find out more about the best independent quilt shops in North America. To listen to a live show, tune in Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Just log on to allpeoplequilt.com/radio. To hear past shows, go to iTunes and search for American Patchwork and Quilting Radio. We hope you'll join us because we know that quilting changes everything.
Welcome back to Brain Lady Speaks on the Lessons in Joyful Living Radio Network. By including the latest scientific research on the brain-personality connection, Julie Brain Lady Anderson provides her clients with the all-important why behind what people do and how they think. The information she shares will help those who hear to accelerate their success in life and business through the discovery of their natural gifts and maximizing their brain power. Here again is your host, Julie Anderson, with Brain Lady Speaks on the Lessons in Joyful Living Radio Network.
All right. Welcome back. Welcome back to the Brain Lady Speaks radio show. Okay. We've got one more segment left. So I'm going to try to, pull in a few really amazing parts left in the brain that I think is very valuable for everyone to know. I do want to mention that there are some fun things. Like I've got this little silly thing on the different understandings of words between the male and female. It's just a little PDF. I've got some survival tips for understanding the opposite sex. It's a PDF. And then, of course, I've got my CD. I'm going to put a link to all those. You can purchase the CD. He said, she said, who said what? That is much longer, goes into more detail, more explanation. Through the website, yourbestmindonline.com. I will put a link to that. And then I'll also try to link the downloads. I'm not exactly sure how to do that, but we'll try to get the downloads up on the Brain Lady Speaks radio show page on the Lessons in Joyful Living Network. So I'll try to give you that extra stuff that on the show page. Okay. So back to the brain. Let's share these last few things that I think are really important to remember. Another portion of the brain that's larger on average in men than women is the amygdala. Okay, now the amygdala is the emotion. It's like where emotions are kind of processed. Some emotions are processed, namely fear and anxiety. Those types of are processed there. It's the amygdala is what engages the fight or flight, conserve or withdraw response within the brain. Now, again, it's larger in men than in women on average. And during periods of heightened emotion, women will tend to use the right side of this, and men tend to activate the left side. The left side pays attention to detail, and the right side encourages action. Okay, this is a portion of the brain that drives emotional impulses, and it can help to explain why men tend to have a little bit shorter fuses than women. Why they're a little bit more on the alert side when it comes to dangers, things like that. It has to do with the amygdala, and it's different in size between the male and the female. Okay. Another portion of the brain is the hippocampus. And this is really a fascinating. Again, on average, the hippocampus in the female brain is larger than the hippocampus in the male brain. Okay. Any guesses what the hippocampus is responsible for? Well, the hippocampus this is the section of the brain that is responsible for converting short-term memories into long-term memories. Okay, real life application of this. Why is it, when you have wondered, gentlemen listening, or when you have been curious, women listening, why men do not remember things, emotional episodes from the past, as well as women do? It has to do with the hippocampus, because women can sometimes remember, and trust women on this because they have a larger hippocampus, so they remember better, a specific emotional episode that maybe happened 10 years ago. So I don't know, guys listening, if you've ever had this moment when something has happened and the wife responds, pulling out of the past, this thing that happened 10 years ago, this argument, this fight over, the way you put the bookshelf together. I don't know what it is, just whatever, right? And the man kind of stands there with this dumbfounded look on his face like, what are you talking about? I don't remember that at all. And the woman proceeds to say, yes, you were there. You're the one who did this, and this. Remember? And so was supposed to come over for dinner. And, it was right after Jimmy broke his leg and blah, 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 blah. And the woman remembers this emotional episode in detail. And the man is sitting there going, what the heck? What on earth? I don't remember any of that. Maybe he has this vague memory of the bookshelf, but the rest of it just didn't get lodged into his long-term memory banks because he doesn't have the hippocampal space to do it. Whereas the woman, she has a larger hippocampus, and this is the section that's responsible for converting those memories. So women kind of like they stamp and burn into their memory these emotional episodes, and men don't necessarily do it. Now, the practical, how this plays out in real life is sometimes this can cause some real hurt feelings. And this has even happened in my life with my relationship with my husband, right? It has been this situation where it's been like, how could you possibly not remember that? That was such a traumatic experience in our relationship. And the things you said to me were so hurtful. And really, even the things I said to you, it was a huge blow up, a huge argument. How can you not remember that? Is what the woman is thinking. And the man's thinking, why won't she let things from the past go? I don't even remember that. I cannot believe that she is still hurting over that. How can she possibly still be holding something against me that I did 10 years ago? Something that I don't even remember. Right? So remember how I said at the beginning of the show that there's a lot of comedy connected to this? But the practical, the real life, how this plays out in real life can be very, very serious. So now that you understand this brain difference between the male and female, the woman can now go, okay, wait a minute, step back out of the situation and remember his hippocampus does not have the space that my hippocampus does. He's not as gifted at converting short-term memories into long-term memories. So he isn't lying to me. He isn't being inconsiderate. He really, honestly did not do that conversion. It's not that he doesn't care. It's not that he didn't care at the time. It's that his brain does not work the way my brain does. And the man, on the other hand, can stop and go, okay, all right, I get it. I remember what this brain lady person said on this radio show. I understand that my wife or my significant other, that this impacted her brain deeper than it impacted my brain because her hippocampus is larger and she converts to long-term memories and brands it in her memory bank easier than I do. So what I really don't remember can still cause her pain. And when you bring that understanding into the relationship, there's this dynamic shift. Because even if it's causing a problem at this very second, if you can take a deep breath and you can step back and breathe, it makes a big difference. Okay? One other part before we close out that I really, 2 parts that I'm going to bring in here really quick. One is the hypothalamus nucleus. This little tiny place, the nucleus of the hypothalamus, in the average heterosexual male is approximately 2.5 times larger than a woman. 2.5 times as much space, even though it's really small, 2.5 times as much space. Research shows that the hypothalamus nucleus is directly related to sexual behaviors. So think about that. I talked about how men are single thought focused. I talked about how their brain works in terms of their thinking process. They have an area of their brain that's 2.5 times larger that is directly related to sexual behavior. Any guess what that leads to? Right, I don't think I have to explain that much more. Another thing that I think is incredibly important to understand is that the primary hormone that is released in the female brain during an orgasm is oxytocin. So during that very intimate moment, it's oxytocin. Oxytocin is the hormone that connects you. It is the bonding hormone. It's actually the same hormone, believe it or not, that is connected when a woman is breastfeeding her child, that connects her to that baby. This is what's released for a woman. Guess what's in the man brain? It's not oxytocin. It's dopamine. Dopamine is the feel good. It's the same thing that's released when you're taking a hit from a drug. Okay? So understand, this is going to change the way the brains process those very intimate moments. So we are running real out of time. I got to wrap this up, but I love this quote by Dr. Ruminger. He says, it's quite striking how complementary the brains of men and women really are. So we just talked about some of the differences, but when you think about it, they're so different that when they come together, they make the whole picture. They really complement. So where the man's good at single thought focusing, the woman can get the global picture. She can take lots of things in mind, right? While the man is working on on fixing the problem, the woman can work on walking through the steps. Okay? It's beautiful, beautiful, the combination that they have. Now, this is not the only topic that we're going to be sharing when we talk about male-female and relationships. We're going to continue this conversation in Relationship Month in February next week. And then in the final Wednesday on February, we're going to interview some relationship experts. Again, go to the page, the Brain Lady Speaks page on the Lessons in Joyful Living Network. Later this afternoon, give me a little while to get these things up and see if I can't and find those downloads for survival tips for the opposite sex. I review this information and give some good advice on that. Go to the website, go to yourbestmindonline.com and go to the products page and get that audio, get that CD on, survival or understanding the opposite sex, the he said, she said, who said what CD. Lots of good information in there. And until next week, I really, 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 really want for you to have an amazing week. I want you to be able to take this crazy cool information and be able to apply it to make your relationships better and brighter and to just relieve some stress and pressure off of them, right? When you understand that, it's just a brain thing, they're not trying to hurt your feelings. The guy's not trying to be rude. The girl's not trying to run you over. It's just the difference in the way our brains work. It's just that beautiful, beautiful, colorful piece of the brain personality connection. So until next week, have an amazing week. Have a great week and get out, exercise, get some fresh air, walk with your significant other hand in hand and enjoy the differences and embrace the differences. And thank you. Thank you for spending this time on the Brain Lady Speaks radio show on the Lessons in Joyful Living Network. Have a great day. All right. Enjoy life. Enjoy your relationships. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Brain Lady Speaks with Julie Anderson. Julie Brain Lady Anderson is considered to be one of the nation's top experts on the brain-personality connection.